yours. Okay, we left it off last week where David was running for his life from his own son. Well, he did cross the river, and he took refuge in a city. And he got his people ready to fight because they knew that they were going to be fighting. Absalom gathered up Israel, and he gathered together an army, and he went out after David. When David's army went out to fight, David said, called to Joel, who was his, leader of his army? Joel? Okay. Anyway, the leader of his army. It's funny how I know until I start talking and then I don't know. He called it the leader of his army. And he said, in front of the whole army, I know you have to fight Israel, and I don't want to fight Israel, but you go do what you need to do, but don't kill my son. Don't kill Absalom. Don't hurt my son. Well, that's kind of a hard thing to do with Absalom being in charge of the army, right? So, David stayed in the city.
Most kings don't go out and fight, though.
David did early in his career, but at this point, he no longer goes out and fights with the armies, because they're afraid he's going to get killed and then they'll lose. Absalom did go out and was out fighting with his people. But well, it's kind of 50-50. It just depends. In this case, David stayed in the city like his people wanted him to. So they would know he was protected and they could devote everything to fighting instead of protecting him. But Absalom was out with his troops fighting. And when David's general was out fighting, the battle was, both sides were getting hurt pretty bad. Absalom had really long hair. The Bible says that he would cut his hair once a year, and it weighed a whole lot of pounds, or their unit of measurement. Really long, thick hair. He was riding a mule during the battle, and he went under a tree, and when he did, his hair got caught in the branches of the tree, and the mule kept going. So he's hanging by his hair from the tree.
That must be embarrassing.
To say the least, embarrassing. It's probably quite painful.
This is why you cut your hair.
Yeah. If you need a reason, I guess. One of the soldiers saw what was happening, and he went to the general and he said, I just saw Absalom hanging by his hair from a tree. And the general said, well, why didn't you kill him? And the soldier said, my life is worth more than that. I heard what David said. He'd have killed me if I'd killed his son. And the general said, I don't have time for you. And he gathered a few men, and they went and they killed Absalom, hanging from the tree by his hair. And then he sent a messenger to David. When Absalom died, all of Israel ran away. They quit fighting David. And his general sent a messenger to him, telling him that they won. When David heard that Absalom died, he began to cry, and he began to mourn. And this is interesting, because earlier, David had had a son who died as a baby. And when he did, when the baby was sick, David mourned and cried and prayed. When the baby died, he quit crying. He said, well, you know what? My son is never going to come to me. I will go see him in heaven someday. I will be with him again. And he quit mourning at that point. But in this case, when he heard Absalom had died, he was mourning so hard he was inconsolable. Because he knew Absalom wasn't right with God. And he knew he would never see his Absalom again. Eventually his general came and told him, knock it off. Your people are ashamed because they won, and that's not right. You're not going to have an army at all. You're not going to have a country if you don't knock it off and start talking nice to your people. And eventually David went back and he retook the throne. The people reappointed him king, and he ruled for the rest of his life. But I find it interesting, his responses to the death of his two different sons, the one he knew he would see again in heaven, and the one he knew he never would. That's an important thing to ask parents, what decisions our kids make, and it's your decision, whether you serve God or not. I can't make that decision for you. If I could, I would, but I can't. You have to make the decision whether you will serve God yourself. That's a choice everyone has to make for themselves. Let's sing a song. Okay. For those who haven't learned sign language yet, this is the letter B in sign language. Can you do that? Can you do a B? And this is I, and this is B, L, E. And that's how you spell the word Bible, okay? So let's sing our song, and you won't do it fast enough to do it the first time. It takes a lot of practice to get your hands that way. Okay. The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand upon the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E, the B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand upon the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E. Okay, thank you.
You can see that that's the most